What up, everybody? Welcome to Operation Moksha. As always, I'm your host, Chris Orozco, and today we're gonna be talking about two different kinds of advice. Advice given to people with serious trauma and advice given to people who don't. Because the thing is, if you don't experience any serious trauma in your life, your mind kind of just does what you tell it to do. And advice like, just do it. Do it! Or like, go out and do the thing, and maybe you don't want it enough, or all those sorts of things that we tell people to get them motivated, that will actually work for somebody that doesn't have a lot of trauma, but that could actually be really bad for someone who does have a lot of trauma, and I'll tell you exactly why. The part of me that could go out and do things and strategize and commit and engage in all those sorts of things, that part of me was buried for most of my life. I've only really been able to uncover it in the last couple years. So the whole like, just go do it thing, didn't really work for me, because when I tried to just go do it, my brain would shut down and it would work against me and I would forget what I was doing. Sometimes I would get so tired that I would feel like I had to go to sleep. All kinds of things can happen when your brain works against you. Because the thing about it is, for me, I was afraid of accomplishments. I was afraid of committing to things. I was afraid of engaging with things because of my trauma. My dad died when I was a really little kid, and I got the idea that the world is a scary, dangerous, chaotic place that can severely hurt me at a moment's notice, and there's nothing I can do about it. And all that's true, but as a kid, the way I dealt with that was just being extremely avoidant of life, because it occurred to me as something terrifying that I didn't want to be a part of. When I grew up and actually wanted to accomplish things, I was trying to accomplish things from the perspective and in the mind and body of somebody who is terrified of engaging with reality. So I had to kind of do things a little bit differently. I would hear all the advice, all the other coaches and all the influencers and everybody would give, and I'd be like, cool, I get that. I get the spirit behind it, but that doesn't really work for me, because when I try to do that, my brain shuts down. I can't think anymore. I forgot what I was doing, and I just can't do it. So what I had to do was actually take a look at the part of me that shuts down, figure out why it shuts down, and begin to work with that. Because it's like, once I was able to uncover and integrate the part of me that can focus on things and can strategize things, all the advice that I was hearing from everyone else of like, just do it, like you don't want it bad enough, like you gotta have discipline, blah, 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 blah. All that stuff started to make sense, and all that stuff started to be relevant to me. And I have been developing discipline, and I've been developing all these other things now that my mind does what I tell it to. However, prior to my mind not doing what I tell it to do, prior to that, my mind would work against me, and all of their advice would actually make me feel worse. Because I'd be like, why the fuck can't I do it? Like, why? Like, what's wrong with me that like, everyone else is doing this thing, why the fuck can't I? There was really good reasons for that. Like I outlined earlier, like most of my being was terrified of being associated with the world or integrated with the world or engaging with it. And so, of course, the like just go do it mentality didn't work for me, because my brain was wired for avoidance. And this works for a lot of different things. This works for relationship advice. People want to act like relationship advice is really fucking simple, but it's not. Like you might have codependency issues, you might have attachment issues, you might have so many different things going on that make this simple advice that you give not really applicable to you. So you kind of have to ask yourself, in all these different areas of life, because they do differ, because there's like, just go to the gym. Like that'll work for some people, but it won't work for other people. Like just communicate with your partner or whatever. That'll work for some people, but for other people, when they go to communicate, they get so shut down that they just simply can't fucking do it. And then all this advice is just, well, why can't I do it? It's like, motherfucker, you've got reasons. It's important to say that this isn't an excuse. Like this isn't something that you can just say like, oh, I have trauma, therefore your advice doesn't matter for me and I don't have to fucking do anything, whatever. Because like you could do that, but what kind of life is that really gonna give you? It's like if you're saying that, oh, I have trauma, so therefore I don't have to pursue the things that are meaningful for me. I don't have to engage in relationships in the way that's actually gonna make them work. And I don't have to do all these things that would actually make my life better. While from a certain perspective, it might make you feel a little bit better because there's no more pressure and guilt about not doing the big things. Your life will lack meaning. Your life will lack structure. It will lack the things that make life beautiful and worth living and enjoyable and fulfilling and all that sort of stuff. So these aren't intended to be coping mechanisms. This isn't intended to give you an excuse. Instead, what this is intended to do is tell you where you need to be directing your energy, right? Because it's like all those things that all the other people told me of like work really hard, be disciplined, do the thing or whatever. I recognize those as true. Like if you want to accomplish your dreams, you have to put work into them. You have to actually build the thing. You actually have to accomplish things. But for me, I knew that my mind worked against me to a large degree. So I spent most of my time dealing with the parts of me that worked against me And then when I had some space to actually be able to move forward, I moved forward. So in my business, for the longest time, I could only ever really have like 2 or 3 clients. I'd put out my content for the day, and then that would be pretty much all my system could handle. And then I'd spend the rest of my day processing my experience, dealing with the fears, making sure that the next day I could at least show up just as much, if not develop my capacity a little bit more. Kind of like I've talked about integrating new ideas, it's like you're kind of integrating that hustle or that discipline or that thing that other people that don't have serious trauma can just go do. Like my brother's kind of like this. My brother's the kind of guy where you tell him to go do something, no matter how complex, difficult, or challenging it is, he'll just go sit down and do it, and it'll get done, and it'll get done well. That's because his brain works differently than mine does. When I get told to just go do something, if it's not something I'm good at doing, like I can have all these fucking internal experiences that kind of shut me down that I'm still working with, which is why I pay people to do all the things that my brain shuts down around. It's taken me a long time to get there. I've had to chip away and build my capacity slowly so that I could hold enough clients to be able to pay me the amount that I wanted to make, to be able to put out the content that I want to be able to put out, and to be the kind of person in my work that I wanted to be. I had to chip away at it for a really long period of time. It honestly took me like 8 or 9 years in order to build the capacity to be the guy that I am right now. As I was developing this capacity, I would just think like, okay, how much do I actually have space for today? How much can I actually do today? And then I would do as much as I possibly could that day. And then once the resistance started to get unbearable, I would just kind of stop and be like, okay, like I need to stay consistent. I need to stay sustainable. Because what happens to a lot of people is they'll hear the like hustle mentality sort of shit, which again, I like, that is good. But they'll hear that, and then there'll be all these other parts of them that oppose that hustle. Maybe they'll be like me and they'll be afraid. And then they know they need to hustle, so they just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, but then they're in conflict with this part of them that's trying to get them to stop. And so a huge chunk of their energy is being diverted to keeping this thing down so it doesn't get them in the way. So not only are you like pushing past the parts of you that want you to slow down, but you're also diverting a lot of your energy to keeping it down. And so what happens is a lot of people get burned out because you can't sustain that. Because you're supposed to be balanced. You're supposed to have parts that tell you when to go, and you're supposed to have parts that tell you when to stop and like reflect and like and replenish yourself and do things to enjoy yourself. And it's like you need both sides of the dynamic. So if all you have is the hustle, but there's other parts of you getting in the way, you're gonna burn yourself out. And this happens to a lot of people where they'll like hustle for a few weeks, a few days or whatever, and they'll go really well, and then they'll shut down for a couple days or even for a couple weeks, and they won't know why it's happening. They'll be like, what the fuck, I was just like on top of the world yesterday, and it's because of this internal conflict. And so in order to maintain a sustainable pace where you're not like taking 3 steps forward and then taking 3 steps back and then regaining all of your energy and regaining all of your courage and going back out there again, if you just push as far as you can push, honor your capacity, honor when you're hitting the max of your capacity, and then back off, process all the fears, do all that sort of stuff, grow your capacity. Once you're done doing everything you can do, then your capacity will at least be where it was the next day, so you can do what you did before again. And if you keep doing this, your capacity will actually grow, so each day you have more capacity to do more things, to bring more energy, more whatever it is. And I'm giving you the example of my career, but this works for relationships, it works for everything. If you want to get into a relationship, but you know that you're codependent, it's like something that I've done in my life is like, I'll get into a relationship and I'll be like, yo, look, I just want you to know, these are my patterns, these are what I'm working through, so this is what I can commit to, and this is what's likely to come up for me, this is how I'm gonna handle it, I'm gonna do my best, I might fuck up sometimes, but this is where I'm at. And then that allows me to get into relationships with people that know my capacity, know where I'm at, know what I need, and then I can kind of engage with them to the degree that it feels good, let them know that it's like, hey, I'm starting to get freaked out, I need to back out a little bit and figure out what's going on and deal with my patterns and shit, and then I'll reconnect. And it may not be ideal for some people, but there's a lot of people that are actually really okay with this because it gives them space to be themselves as well. And it gives them space to work through their shit, which is really fucking helpful. So, it may take a little bit of time to find people like that, but what I wanna do is just give you the example of what it looks like to honor your capacity and allow it to grow slowly over time. Because if you just expect yourself to be in the secure relationship style, but you're not in the secure relationship style, maybe you're avoidant or attached or whatever, and you take this advice as if this is how you should be, and you just try to be that, even though your mind is programmed to be something else, you're gonna be in conflict with yourself. It's not really gonna work, and at the very least, you'll know that you're faking it, and you'll feel at least a little bit like a fraud because you are kind of lying. You're saying, I'm actually this unhealthy thing, but I'm pretending to be this other thing. And so you will kind of feel out of alignment with yourself, and it won't really be a very enjoyable experience. So all of this to say that like hustle mentality, you know, like just go do it, have discipline, all these different ideas that you've heard aren't bad ideas. There have been a lot of people that have rejected hustle culture or whatever because it's not trauma informed or whatever, but like not everybody has trauma. Like if you don't have to worry about this shit, just go do what you want to do. Please, for the love of God, just go fucking build it. But if for whatever reason, when you try to go build it or create whatever it is, your mind stops you, then you have to know that you're dealing with something that needs attention. And if you give it the proper attention now and take the time to unfold it and let it melt and actually let the pattern just kind of disappear and integrate into something new, then you won't have to keep revisiting it. You'll actually just have that new part of you pushing you forward rather than constantly putting you in conflict with yourself. So it's worth it to take the time. I've had to take a lot of time to build up my business to the point where it is now because of how much trauma I had to work through. However, I mean, it's taken me 10 years to get where I'm at now, but now that I'm here, I know my foundation is solid. I know my foundation is stable. I know I've integrated the ideas and the behaviors and the identities and the ways of being that will continue to not only help me stay sustainable, but to help me keep growing and keep thriving on higher and higher levels because I've got the foundation that I get to build from. So if you are somebody that experiences trauma and you try to do all these things and your mind shuts you down, like keep in mind that like a hustle is good, but you may have to do some integration work before you can actually adopt those ideas and live in alignment with them. And if you're not that kind of person, just go fucking do it.
Just do it! Make your dreams come true! Just do it!
Like just go fucking do it right now. Turn this off, go fucking do it. But if you are the person with the trauma, acknowledge which parts of you are stopping you, why they're stopping you, take the time to get to know them, figure out what their needs are, meet those needs, integrate that part, and get pushed forward in the direction of your choosing where you can actually develop a strong hustle and you can develop more discipline in a way that is actually holistic, gets integrated, and feels good for you. Now again, like all of these is complicated as fuck, so let me know if you have any more questions. I'd be happy to go into anything, but I wanted to outline this because so many people are shitting on hustle culture as if it's like a bad thing, but it's not. And too many people are attributing trauma to things that they don't really need to be attributing them to. And I just want to break it down to like, look, if you can go do it, go do it. And if you can't go do it, if you just cannot make yourself go do it, don't take that as an excuse. Don't just stop. Figure out why that's happening. Figure out what's stopping you, deal with it, integrate it, and then become the person that can walk powerfully in the direction of your choosing. So there is an integration between both, but you may just have to make some peace with your parts in order to get there. So I'm Chris Orozco. I love you. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you next time.